Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to another episode of Radio KBE. I think I'm going to start calling you guys Radioheads instead of calling you guys Laker fans because maybe it's just a cool way of being a little bit more distinct with what this community is kind of turning out to be. First and foremost, I want to shout out everybody that subscribed. We broke the 400 subscriber barrier, which is pretty awesome. We did that in less than 2 months, which is way faster than I expected us to do it. So I appreciate everybody that's liked and subscribed. It helps the channel out a lot, and the channel seems to be getting more and more traction with your support. So thank you to the Radioheads that have been out there just kind of sharing the channel and seeing what's been going on. So today's episode, I just wanted to talk about the signings that the Lakers have made. So they've signed Juan Toscano Anderson. They've signed Troy Brown Jr. They've signed Damian Jones. They've signed Lonnie Walker. And then as of this recording, they got Thomas Bryant for the minimum. And so Lonnie Walker was the only player who was the taxpayer MLE signing. And as I mentioned in the last episode, I think a lot of these signings sort of indicate that there's going to be a larger move with Russ, with Talon, with Nunn potentially being moved around in order for the Lakers to sort of fill out the rest of their roster and sort of get the star power, the scoring, the shooting that they need. The Lakers themselves have come out and said that if they're going to improve the shooting on this team, it's going to be via trade. It's not going to be via, veteran minimum free agency and stuff like that. But what they are doing is that they're using these veteran minimum contracts to target, and this was part of their strategy, to target players with upside. Players who are athletes, players who need minutes to kind of build up their value. But the great part is that the Lakers are staying pretty consistent with what they're doing. They're signing athletes, they're signing young guys, which is a big deal. The team that we've had, the teams that we fielded the past couple of years have been, not to say they're not effective, obviously, because they were effective, but there needed to be an eventual gradual direction change with where things were going. The Lakers were relying too much on not Anthony Davis, but LeBron to be the wing for the team, the premier offense defensive wing. And the thing is that at his, not only at his age, but other teams with star players, maybe outside of the guys that are in their mid 20s or low 20s, they're not being asked to do that. And so that was eventually going to take a toll on LeBron. And I think one of the things that's really great to see is that they're going in this direction. Some of these guys are raw. Some of these guys are guys like Lonnie Walker, guys like Thomas Bryant, Damian Jones. They're a little bit raw, but it seems as though Coach Ham and assistant coach Gent, who basically has the first position as the assistant coach, seems as though they're confident in their ability to coach these guys up, and I'm okay with that. I think a big part of why the Lakers were unsuccessful last season is they had too many older guys who were established vets who just weren't interested in doing the small things that were necessary for the Lakers to win games. And those small things go a long way in sort of they go a long way in the course of the regular season. And if you can get them to follow instruction, you can coach them up, and you can put them in optimal positions. That's always beneficial. And so all of the additions that the Lakers have made have checked off those two boxes. They're all athletes, and they're all sort of young, athletic. They're all high motor guys. They're guys that'll do the dirty work, who've sort of been known to do that to some degree. Some guys are better at defense than others. But the thing is that when you're all athletes and you fit within a scheme, then being an athlete sort of helps when it comes to being a better defensive player or playing it within a defensive scheme. And so we've seen many situations where there are players who are not as skilled, but who are excellent, athletes that get put in a position where they have to defend certain guys, and that athleticism helps bridge some of the gap. And that's why I like some of the things that the Lakers have done. They've gotten guys who are not, all 6'3", 6'2", 6'1" guys. They've gotten guys that are 6'5" and above so far. Obviously, we'd like to get a few guys that are 6'7" and taller, but 6'6", 6'5", 6'6" is a good start. And they all have good wingspans and all that sort of stuff. All the buzzword stuff that you typically hear scouts and stuff like that say when they're talking about young players. And that's the thing, many of these guys are young. But you can see how many of these guys can fit into the roles that Coach Ham may want for players to be around stars. Young guys that can follow instructions and do the things that they need to do for the team to be successful. So I really like the tandem of Damian Jones and Thomas Bryant. I like the fact that we were able to get both of them on minimums. Jones was probably going to be a minimum. I thought Bryant would possibly command taxpayer MLE, but it looks like he's we got him for the vet minimum. Brown and Toscano Anderson, Lonnie Walker. A lot of people have grumbled about getting him at the taxpayer MLE. I think he's going to actually be much better than people realize. I've seen the graphs and all that sort of stuff about him. I don't. If you watch the tape on him, the games where he's played well, like it's very replicable with probably how Coach Ham is going to play and stuff like that. So I'm very optimistic about what it is. And like I said, I think they really believe that Coach Gent can coach these guys up, get them to be better shooters, all that sort of stuff. So everything that's been added, all these guys have been added have been really great. One of the things that I've always been a big proponent of is motor, and why you have to have guys that have excellent motors when you play for Coach Ham or when you play for a guy next to a guy like LeBron, Russ. If it's somebody else and it's not Russ, you need to have, not only do you have guys that are willing to do the dirty work and stuff like that, but you also have to have guys that have good motors. So by adding a guy like Damian Jones, by adding a guy like Thomas Bryant, you have dedicated players who are willing to come down and screen every possession to start a possession off, just as a first action if nothing else is going on. The Lakers didn't have that. They didn't have enough of that, and that was a big deal. And I know a lot of folks are going to be making a lot about Thomas Bryant's ability to shoot. He doesn't shoot them at a very, very high volume over the course of the season. So I don't want people to think that all of a sudden he's going to start. I don't think he's going to start taking like 5-6 threes a game or something like that. But he has the availability to pick and pop, and he has the ability to pick and roll. And so compared to maybe Damian Jones, who's a little bit more of a verticality, above the rim sort of athlete when it comes to running pick and roll and stuff like that, that matters. Like having guys who are willing to do that every single play, especially because we know, Anthony Davis may not necessarily be inclined to do it every single play. That's a big deal. That's a small part of the game that us as fans don't appreciate enough, but it does take a toll on their bodies, and it does take a toll on a guy like Anthony Davis's body if he has to be the sole person that does that over and over again. So if we wanted to have two potential centers to play next to Anthony Davis, to play in a role where they're constantly screening for the ball handler as a first action, they're running hard in transition, and they're rim running or they're popping out or setting off ball screens. We've got that. We've got that with Damian Jones, and we've got that with Thomas Bryant. Does it mean they're going to be like at the top of the league when it comes to that? No. But if they can be great in their roles, then we can be successful. So I really like that addition. I hope Thomas Bryant, like his injury, he's recovered from his ACL injuries. That ACL injuries are not as bad to come back, but each individual player, it's different for them. So it'll be interesting to see how he recovers and how he goes. But again, I'm really happy that we were able to land a guy like him. He was somebody I honestly thought was going to be out of our budget, and maybe get a starting position with a little bit more than the veteran minimum. So though he signed for a veteran minimum, there's two ways that we can look at it. Either his market wasn't that good because of his injury situation, or it's just teams didn't want to spend more than that on a non-wing player, because we know wings are all the rage right now when it comes to signing players. So I'm happy that the Lakers landed him, because I think that's a really, really good player to land. In addition to the other guys that we've landed, I think they'll fit in with what Coach Ham wants to do, and just kind of if he's trying to replicate what the Bucks are able to do with some of their role players. I think the guys that the Lakers have added are going to be good in that capacity. And so, one of the things. So the second thing that I want to talk about was just this ongoing Kyrie saga and the update in regards to it. I told you guys in the last video that there was one more card that the Nets were going to pull, and the card was going to be that they are going to say that they're okay with Kyrie and KD just running it back and just coming back um, in as far as training camp and just mending fences. Like they were going to say that. They're going to keep saying that because everybody wants to talk about leverage and stuff like that, and you have so many people, um, on Twitter just discussing, oh well, you guys want this guy so desperate, you want to get Russ off of your roster so desperately. Why would you like? You guys are the ones who have no leverage. Like, whatever conversations happen on Twitter, Twitter sentiment doesn't mean anything when it comes to reality. Like, there is like Kyrie has nuked his market. He doesn't want to be in Brooklyn. The Lakers do not feel, they may not feel that Russ is a good fit, but there's a difference in their situations, and that which is making this leverage conversation silly. The Lakers are fine with bringing Russ back if they have to. Like Coach Ham has talked up Russ, and has been pretty vocal about what he wants Russ to do for them to be successful. I think on base value, just off the strength of just how bad that roster was last season, even in the worst case scenario, if they decide to hold on, the Nets decide to be brash and they want to hold on to Kyrie and KD and carry this into the regular season, which I don't think they're going to do, because that it just doesn't seem like it's a very good situation that's going on over there. The Lakers will just keep playing with Russ, and they'll probably win a whole bunch of games at the beginning of the season. And if they do win a whole bunch of games at the beginning of the season, then that's just going to make Russ's value better. It's not going to make his value worse. It's going to basically make people think that, oh, okay, maybe it was Coach Vogel and it was the system and that's why he was unsuccessful. So this idea that people have where like we should be in a state of panic or we should be in a state of whatever it is and we have to give up 2 unprotected picks, like you don't have to do that. And you're not in a position where you have to do that, because you're building something that's good. You're building towards something that's good. So you could see that if they do move Russ, what are the pieces that you need to fit in to make everything else work? And it's not like a position of desperation, stuff like that. The Lakers, if anything, aren't under any deadline. And so that's the thing that you're going to sort of see now more and more often. You're going to see Woj and Shams and Chris Haynes and whoever else is an insider. You're going to see them now jockey more and more and talk about who actually doesn't have an issue with waiting until training camp and stuff like that, or waiting until the season starts. Like I told you guys in the last video, that's what they were going to say, and that's what they're going to continue to say. That they'll get even more bold. The Nets will say something to the degree of, like they're very, very comfortable with bringing them back, and Kyrie's already said that he'll honor his contract, so they expect KD and Kyrie to be professionals and show up and stuff like that. But I think that's just for negotiations. These negotiations don't take place in the media. They take place like in person. Like if Sean Marks is calling Rob Pelinka. He's not going to Shams and saying, hey, report this out because I think this is going to influence Rob Pelinka. Like they're just going to call each other or text each other. And so I think this is kind of silly, the direction that it's going in. But it's good for Stadium or The Athletic or ESPN because it gets them a lot of engagement from Lakers Twitter. So I wouldn't stress it too much. Like I said before, don't allow it to ruin your entire day. Like the first thing in the morning, you're going to hear something, like either something that's in the favor of the Lakers or not in the favor of the Lakers. And then the rest of the day, it's just going to be people arguing about it on the timeline. So, if it happens, it happens. And if it takes longer, then it takes longer. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I think the Lakers are building towards a very good team, and the profile of the team is shaping up to be much better than I think it was last season. And like I said, I'm on board with everything that Coach Ham brings, sort of philosophically and stuff like that. So that being the case, these signings continue to be great. The Kyrie saga continues, and we'll just see what happens. But if nothing else, they'll be in a good spot. I think the Lakers will be in a good spot, regardless of whatever happens and whatever direction we decide to go with Russ. But I thought I'd just check in and just kind of chime in because we've now got like 4 or 5 guys on this roster that it's actually exciting to see them added to this team. So as always, I appreciate you guys. If you can like the video, it does help the channel. Tell your friends to subscribe or whatever and join this Radiohead community that we have going on over here. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the timeline. And if nothing else, I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.